Hello, everybody. I'd like to call the public board meeting to order. The attendance tonight, we have all trustees present. There will be 2 attending electronically for the first part of the, Trustee Burgess is attending electronically for the entirety of the meeting. Trustee Sipcar is going to be attending electronically for the private session, and then at 7 p.m. we'll be in person. With that, I need a motion for the approval of the agenda. Trustee Leclerc, Trustee Nelson, anything on the agenda? Nope, then all in support. That's carried, thank you. And now I need a motion to convene to private session. Motion by Trustee Cook and Trustee Leclerc. All those in support? That's carried. So for those who might be watching, we called our meeting to order, but we now need to convene to a private session of the whole board. And then when that work is done, we reconvene back here at 7 o'clock to continue the public agenda. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to reconvene our public meeting. And the first thing I'd like to do is acknowledge that all the trustees are here. We took attendance at 5 o'clock, but I'm going to repeat it. And we have Trustee Burgess on the phone. So all the trustees are present. And at this point, I'd like to call upon Trustee Sipcar to present us with the land acknowledgement.
We acknowledge that we are on land and surrounded by water, originally inhabited by indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Lenni Lenape, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi, and Huron-Wendat peoples. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis.
Thank you, Trustee Sipcar. And now I'd like to ask the Director to present the special order of the day.
I ask that everyone please stand. A tribute to Dakota Rivard. Dakota was a cherished student in the Riverside Secondary School community since starting in grade 9. He left many of his friends from W.F. Herman Elementary, but he embraced the challenge of meeting new friends and having new school experiences. He had a passion for speed and adrenaline. He had a passion for motorcycles, cars, and BMX bikes. He was extremely talented and built his own bikes. He loved spending time with his friends from all circles and hobbies. He excelled in his tech classes at Riverside and was appreciated by his teachers. We lost a compassionate, loving, intelligent, and determined young man. The school and the community will miss Dakota, but he will forever be in all of our hearts. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Houston. And on behalf of all the trustees, I would like to express our sincere sympathy to the family and friends of Dakota. That was a terrible, tragic accident, and our hearts are with the family. Moving on to item E, declaration of conflict of interest. Oh, student trustee.
I would like to declare a conflict of interest on item F due to me being a council member for the town of Essex.
Yep, thank you. And item F, actions of the board meeting in our private session.
Yes, action from private. Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Action from private was F1. Could I have a mover? Trustee Leclerc, seconder. Trustee Cook, and all in favor?
A matter of property.
Just the title of that.
Yes, that was a matter of property. Thank you. And that passes. Any opposed? Trustee McKinley? And thank you, that passes. Okay, and on legal matters, there were 2 other motions, and we're going to call for the motion. Trustee Leclerc, Trustee Cook? On both motions? Trustee Leclerc, Trustee Cook. All those in support? Any opposed? And that passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Nelson. Item G, minutes of previous meetings. So there's a public meeting from November 7th, a special public meeting November 13th, the organizational meeting November 21st, and the minutes of the special public board meeting November 28th. Could I have someone move those four, please? Trustee Buckler, Trustee Sipcar. All those in support? That's carried. Thank you very much. Item H, any business arising from the minutes? No? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our student trustee presentations.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Good evening, trustees, Director Houston, senior administration, and members of the public. At the November 28th Student Senate meeting, Ms. Ashley Kirby and her team from the Windsor-Essex County's Health Unit discussed a new, exciting campaign called Break the Vape Challenge, a video contest for students. Student senators shared their ideas on promoting the campaign and prize incentives that would motivate student engagement. Numerous senators actually signed up right away to participate in the campaign very personally. Student Senate's holiday goodwill activity this year will support local hospitals for children in pediatric wards and emergency rooms. We are creating a children's activity booklet. Each high school has designated one page of the book with activities such as the crossword puzzle and word searches geared to children of all ages. The Student Leadership Conference was also held on November 30th. 15 student leaders from all of our secondary schools came together dressed in their school spirit to further their leadership abilities by learning from each other and sharing best practices. In place of a traditional keynote speaker, we heard from 8 senators throughout the day who inspired students with short talks about their own path to leadership and improving concepts in leadership. Attendees engaged in activities on problem solving, collaboration, communication and adaptability, leadership and commerce, and consensus building. There were also group discussions on effective networking, social media management, proposals and persuasion, collaboration, and student engagement. It was great to see student leaders from different schools networking and sharing ideas, and we'd like to take this chance to thank Director Houston for bringing remarks despite your busy schedule. You left the students feeling like they truly had a voice, and many did share that with me. We want to thank Michelle Marcus, who also helped Student Trustee Pine and myself coordinate the day.
And we have more.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll read the Student of the Month nomination. So the Student of the Month for December is Ozego Alu, a grade 10 student. A grade 10 student at Tecumseh Vista Academy, an outstanding role model for the theme of collaboration. No student at TVA has demonstrated better collaborative skills than Ozego. Her basketball coach and teacher shared a story of the power of Ozego's collaboration skills. When trying to put together the junior girls team this fall, the coach approached Ozego despite her being a complete stranger to the game of basketball. Known as a key player who led the junior girls soccer team to a WEXA victory last year, the basketball coach recognized that Ozego's collaborative nature would translate to success on the basketball court. Ozego quickly became an instrumental player on the basketball team. Her coach attributes this to her hard work and dedication, but in the end, her collaboration skills are what makes her such an amazing player and teammate. Ozego transfers her collaboration skills to every activity she is involved in. In the classroom, she works well with everyone and completes the tasks at hand with a smile on her face. A classmate attests to this by saying Ozego's empowering words help everyone work together and achieve success. Ozego was selected to attend YLC Youth Leadership Camp this fall, where she learned how the best leaders are those who are able to uplift their fellow students. Ozego is supportive of her peers, using active listening skills, empathy, and understanding which enable her to effectively collaborate with any group of students, regardless of the task. Ultimately, Ozego is the person who everyone wants on their team and is a valued member of the Vortex family. Congratulations, Ozego, for being selected by Student Senate as the December Student of the Month for collaboration.
Thank you and congratulations. Yeah. Okay. Yay. That was great. Okay. We have no delegations for this meeting, no one from the speakers list. So we're moving right on to new business. And they're very different items, so I think I'm going to take them one at a time. So L1 is not a happy recommendation with regard to the revised estimates. Someone like to put that on the floor? Trustee Buckler, Trustee Cook, or Trustee Armstrong like to speak to it? Sorry, sorry. Superintendent Armstrong, but you know, Trustee Armstrong, if you want to speak. Yeah.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, you are correct. This is not a positive request. Administration's in the process of completing the revised estimates, which go to the ministry on December the 15th. And for those that are new, the revised estimates is an updated budget projection. And it reflects more timely information such as enrollment and staffing data, as well as revised assumptions. The original budget for 23-24 was submitted to the ministry on June the 23rd, 2023. The original budget that was filed with the ministry reflected a deficit of $4,464,344. This deficit was required at that time to address certain cost pressures. Those included staff absenteeism. There was a budget projection that was increased by $3 million. That was consistent with what we did with the revised estimates last year. Our actual expenses for 22-23 are in line with that new budget, with that revised budget projection and what we reflected in our original budget. Our original budget also reflected the deficit to deal with extra costs associated with special education and as well with student transportation. So while we're still working on the revised estimates, projection, and submission for the ministry, several cost pressures have been identified, and they're described in the memo that's in your board package. These cost pressures include special education. There was an addition of 18 FTE educational assistants that were added to address student needs. Student transportation. There was a negotiation of bus operator contracts for 23-24 and for 24-25. And we also refined the budget projections. And so those bus operator contract increases are now reflected in our revised estimates. Temporary accommodations is another budget pressure due to portable replacements, acquisition, and relocation. There are facility operating expenses due to increased supplier costs, which are greater than we anticipated. And we also have higher Indigenous educational expenses that we are reflecting at revised estimates because the funding is enveloped and we are going to make sure that the expenditures match that revenue. In order to finalize the revised estimate submission, administration is seeking board approval to use up to 2% of its operating allocation with a deficit at revised estimates not to exceed $9 million. Minister approval is required for an exception to the Education Act, and administration will need to outline the specific measures, the dollar amounts, and the timelines it will take for us to address the deficit. It must be stressed that this is not a sustainable way to operate. And it's very difficult decisions are going to be contemplated and implemented in order to address the structural nature of the board's deficit. All departments and all staffing complements will be assessed. Asking for more funding is not going to solve this problem. Administration will bring back a full report to trustees of the revised estimates at our February Operations and Finance Committee meeting. And I would be happy to take questions, and I'd like to thank Mr. Mayhew, who is here this evening and is doing a lot of the initial work on the budget. Thanks.
Trustee Sipcar?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Superintendent Armstrong and Mr. Mayhew, for putting in a lot of work over the last few weeks, I know, on this and other things. My question really just came from actually your last comment, which was the language you used around addressing the deficit, and then you specifically said why you said asking for more funding will not solve this, but there are some structural components. I'm wondering if you could speak to what you see those structural components are, and why we can't, or why you would not see it as a sufficient kind of way forward is to ask for more funding. Because just from my vantage point, it seems like costs have gone up in certain areas that are outside of our control, and readjusting isn't necessarily going to solve it. Like, we can't do anything about the price of gas because of, certain supply chain issues. So I'm just curious why asking for more funding wouldn't fix certain things. Thanks.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I'm certainly not suggesting you don't want to write a letter, but we've written lots and lots and lots of letters over the years, and it's never translated into anything tangible back to the board. Okay. And the first thing the ministry, quite frankly, is going to say is, you're asking for money, but what have you done to find efficiencies in your operations? And so we need to partner with that. And if we want more funding at the same time, we have to go back and do it, reflect on where we're spending our money. Some of the items we have no discretion over. The facility costs are utilities. We have to pay the utilities. It's the carbon tax, and it's the cost associated with what's being out in the market right now. Cleaning supplies, I can't control that cost short of changing the product. And trust me, we look at those kinds of alternatives. 80% of our budget is staff. And I'm trying to squeeze blood out of a stone at this point, trying to find $9 million on the 20%. And we're not looking at the 80%. And I'm certainly not trying to alarm people that work at the board. But at the same time, we have to ask ourselves, we got to look at every program. I got to look at every department. Things like, we need to look at IB. We probably need to look at French immersion. Where are we operating those programs? We know our special education students are our most vulnerable students with the greatest needs. But I'm going to be honest with you, we offer a Tesla model, which isn't to say that that's what parents don't want for their children, or what we don't want as educators. It's really expensive, and the funding will never compensate us ever for that. And so we have to go back and take a look at the efficiency of everything. And so that's where we're going to start looking at. We're going to go program by program and department by department to do that, to see where we can find it. Because like I said, we can't get it from the 20% of the operating expenses without looking at the staff complement.
Supplementary?
Yes, and then so on that note, addressing the deficit, does that mean that the ministry will expect that we pay back into our reserves the 1 to 2 or 1 or 2%? Because obviously we're allowed 1%, but the additional one, is that something that we're going to be expected then to pay back, or is that just addressing the deficit means finding efficiencies so that we're not in a constant deficit position for years to come?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. To my knowledge, I've never filed this before, so this is kind of new for me. I don't think the ministry expects us to pay back the deficit, but at the same time, this deficit of $9 million is 1/3 of our surplus, operating surplus, that's gone. So, I mean, that's why we're always trying to be very cautious, and why we build our reserves, so that when you run into a situation where you hit a challenging time, or you have an unexpected expenditure that you're not planning for, we have that ability, subject to the minister's approval, to make use of that. I think the fact that we have that surplus available is helpful to us. And we did have, I did follow up with the ministry. In terms of our board specifically, they rate boards from a risk profile perspective, and we're low risk. We don't file deficits. We don't have those types of challenges. We've planned for them, but we've been fortunate enough where we haven't gotten to that reality. But we're at a point now where I can't I can't guarantee that we're not going to need this. It's looking more and more likely. So at least we're in a position with the surplus to help.
Trustee Buckler?
Well, I don't disagree that we have to review. It's a responsible thing to do, is review our program delivery. We have not done that for a long, long time. But am I not correct in assuming or knowing for the last few years, our most expenses are absenteeism and our spec ed? But our spec ed, our numbers come in every year higher. Every time we get a brand new class of kindergartners, I'd say at least 5 of them are going to require spec ed. And I don't know that we're planning and preparing for that. We're having to get extra staff to do it. We're having to provide the diagnoses ourselves because these kids are coming in not even diagnosed, but we know for a fact when they come in. So I understand that. What can we possibly ever do for our absenteeism to get those numbers down and get those costs under control? I know with the spec ed, we can look at the programming and the way we deliver it. We can't stop them from coming in the way they're coming in. And they certainly want to come to our board because we provide such rich programming for them. So I just, the answer to continually write, we have to write, but you're right. I totally agree that you're right. We can't continue to ask for more funding until we tell them where we're looking for our efficiencies. So I agree with you, but I also think we need to find ways to address our absenteeism problem.
So I will take the opportunity to say that I have never supported use of, our reserves for to balance our budget. I understand why we're in a deficit, and I also know very well that our letters don't do us much good, but I still think it's a responsible thing to do. So I would like to suggest to the trustees that when you send in this revised budget for the due date of December 15th, that we include these cost pressures that are outlined in our report. And again, I don't expect miracles happening at the other end as a result of the letter, but I think it's our responsibility. So do I have consensus from the trustees on that? Thank you. And I will say that today in the phone call with the minister, who thanked us for everything that we do, he recognized cost pressures, particularly in the areas of staffing, and transportation came up as well, but certainly didn't offer anything positive in the way of relief. I think his words were that he would continue to advocate with his colleagues to support the needs of school boards, but I'm not really sure what that means. And I didn't really get anything substantial out of the phone call in terms of really drilling down to the problems with the funding formula. Because I think that's the other part to it. Not only that our board needs to examine what we do and find efficiencies, but I think that with regard to benchmarks and drilling down to the fine details of the funding formulas, I don't think that's happening at the other end either. So if you could prepare, if administration could prepare that letter to go with that, that would be appreciated. Thank you very much.
I had, and
Trustee Burgess, you had a question?
a question, but to that, into the discussion, I support it. I think we have to go there for all the reasons stated, but I do hope that we capture all of it, the student transportation costs, for example. I can't imagine in our consortia how we make it more efficient. And I think we have to be strong in our statements in that we have examined some areas with great scrutiny, and we can't make changes to some without harm. So I think we have to also have the strength in that, whatever letter accompanies.
What'd you say? Thank you, Trustee Burgess. Anyone else? No? Thank you. Then looking for a motion on L2, the recommendation with regard to the Policy and regulation. Sorry, we need to vote. All those in support? Sorry. Any opposed? Oh, I'm opposed in principle, but I'm supporting the motion. Thank you. Okay, motion for L2, Trustee Cook, Trustee Buckler. Any questions on that update? The updates there? No? All those in support? Any opposed? It's carried. Thank you. We have a report on the school naming committee for the new school located in the town of Kingsville. This is very exciting when we're getting close to actually naming the schools. That's pretty exciting. Does someone want to move that? Trustee Cook, Trustee Leclerc. Any questions on the recommendation? You have that in your package? No? All those in support? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We look forward to that. M1, report of the Director of Education.
We should have talked before about that because I'm not sure what that meant. It's okay. So you do have the director's annual report in your package that was sent to you previously. So this year's report was organized using our strategic priorities, creating confident learners, engaging communities, and demonstrating ethical stewardship. We've also included a summary of exciting news stories that are featured on our website and our social media during the 2022-2023 school year. This by no means covers the astronomical amount of great things that happened last year, but it is positive in its exciting summary of the accomplishments of our board. I think you're too far ahead. Yep, one more. There you go. All right. So the Creative Confident Learner section of the report includes highlights from our 22-23 summer learning programs, our Open Minds, our Student Wellbeing Pilot Program, International Students, and Health and Safety Week and Homework Help. And the results of our 2022-2023 student census, as well as our employment systems review and the EQAO assessments are also included in the report for you. Under Engaging Communities, we show how the GECDSB continues to elevate our approach to communication with staff, students, families, and the community. And you will also find implementation highlights from our Dismantling Anti-Black Racism strategy and a summary of the work coming out of our Special Education Advisory Committee. In terms of demonstrating ethical stewardship, the board and senior administration are thoughtful and intentional about the use of our financial, human, environmental, and community resources, and this section of the report includes a summary of the 2022-2023 budget, an introduction and a link to our climate action plan that was presented last year, and an update on all school construction projects and information about the second year of the Ground Engage Express project. And students who participated in this program took part in a meaningful community service experience, sustainable activism, and civic engagement. And I'd like to thank you for your time. Hopefully you had an opportunity to read it and review some of the great things that happened and that you can witness how we are building tomorrow together. And I'd like to thank my team, who are absolutely amazing in the director's office, who worked really hard to put this together to be shared with you. Happy to take any questions if anyone has them.
Thank you very much for the report. And we have any questions from trustees? Trustee McKinley?
I guess it's more of a comment, and thank you for this beautiful report. There's a lot of great stuff in it. There was just one thing I kind of thought I was looking for that wasn't, and maybe we can have that for next year, is the GECPIC and what they were doing as far as our engaging communities. Just a thought. I noticed we have SEAC in there, which is great, and even all the members. I just thought that's what made me think it would have been nice to have seen GECDSB, that's all.
So
Thank you.
my assumption, because it's actually Director
Yes.
Kelly's report,
I get that.
is that in past we've probably featured GECDSB, so we don't feature every single thing every single year. We try to highlight different things each year to give a whole encompassing, but thank you for that. And yes, SEAC is a critical piece, but also is GECDSB.
Anyone else? Well, thank you very much, and we look.
Trustee Chin.
Oh, Trustee Chin, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question regarding the employment systems review, and I see that most of them, focused on diversity, equity, and more inclusive and welcome work environment. And I'm wondering, the main issue that we have the big absent rate, and it also cost us a lot of money to have the supplemental teacher to make it up. And our employment system review, should we focus more on improving the efficiency of the system, or put too much on those equity issues? You know what I mean?
Yep. So
Thank
thank
you.
you for your question. Through you, Madam Chair, you were provided with a copy of the Employment Systems Review previously, and so there was 107 recommendations in it. Not every single one of them is related specifically to equity or to diversity or to inclusion. Some of them are related to policy development. Some of it's related to staff mental health and well-being. So there's a whole variety of recommendations. It's not just about justice, inclusion, equity, and diversity. It's multiple facets within the board. So over time, I know Superintendent Boulay will be bringing forward the Employment Equity Action Plan for trustees to see, and you'll see how over 5 years, all of those recommendations will be implemented. But it's a 5-year plan. It can't possibly be done in one.
Supplementary?
Yeah, thank you. And I hope we can see more, strategies or ways to improve the efficiency, like to minimize the absent rate. Yeah, to improve that.
So having been the Superintendent of Human Resources for 4 years, we try every day. It's exhausting.
Okay.
I can tell you the staff in that department go 1,000% above and beyond every day, starting at 5:30 every single morning, and work tirelessly. They work beyond their work hours of what they're paid for to try to make efficiencies and improvements. And that's not just because I come from that department. All of our departments work really hard, but they are doing everything they possibly can.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to the report next year, where it will be all on your shoulders.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And thank you to Trustee Nelson for sending your questions ahead of time. And I know I saw some responses through email today, but if you have any more questions, let us know.
Thank you.
I think I'm up next.
Yes, we're
So
good. Next.
want me to go next? I think I'm up next, right? Okay, so just very quickly, I'm very happy. So I've left Director Kelly to me now to present my very first strategic plan to the Board of Trustees. You will notice that it is extremely different than in the previous years. In the past, we presented to you our operational plan at this time of the year. And so this year, I present to you our strategic plan. The plan aligns directly with our strategic priorities, which have been established by the Board of Trustees, and it also aligns with the Ministry of Education priorities in the Student Achievement Plan from Bill 98. So senior administration has spent time together working through our 2024 strategic plan and outlining what our goals will be. The goals will be met by using high leverage strategies, which will be monitored and measured throughout the year. We will report to you about the advancement of each one of those goals throughout the year in a variety of different ways. And you'll note that the implementation progress has a legend provided to you in your package, which will be color-coded for you to be able to identify what our progress is within each one of those goals underneath the high leverage strategies. So the data that we use, which you'll see in our metrics, it's a really high-level satellite data, and we've discussed that previously when questions were asked around EQAO, and that is what the ministry is asking us to report on in our student achievement plan. It's very high-level data, and it's often trail data. So in the work in our operational plan, we'll work with more specific data, such as gap data, and sometimes referenced as street data. It's on the ground, it's in the schools, it's student-specific needs, it's not a whole system of grade 3 EQAO reading as an example. So the changes at the student level and school level improvement will ultimately lead to overall board improvement in our satellite data as well. So we do still have our operational plan as the work of the senior team and those throughout the system. But this plan and that plan does have more details in it, specifics to the intricacies of the work that we're doing to achieve the high-level strategies that we've outlined for you. So the work, I guess a safe word to say, has been messy for us as a senior team. We've asked our administrators to get messy with us as we work through this so that we can really stretch our thinking about what it is that we're monitoring and measuring and what our goals really are for the students in our system. But I am extremely confident that we're on a really great path forward for supporting our staff and our students, and we really look forward to bringing you updates in a variety of different ways. I certainly hope that you do embrace the change, and I know it's difficult sometimes to change and not have a 33-page document of every single thing we're doing, down to a 3-page document, very high level, but I promise you that we're still doing the work. And I hope that as we move forward, right now the plan kind of looks like it does, but we'll get, pretty it up a little bit, I think were the words that Melissa used, as we move forward with it. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Trustee Sipkar?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I felt that when I was reading it, I was like, did I miss something? Is this like not complete? I was having a hard time with it, so thank you for that clarification. I had 2 questions, so I'll start with one. You did briefly touch on it in your comments, though, but my question was, I noticed that you used the word emergent data as a senior team to look for patterns that indicate problematic systems or structures. I think this is the first time I've seen something like that in a plan, whether it's operational or strategic, from our board. And so I was just curious if you could speak a little bit more to that. You did mention street data, but I'm just wondering if there's any other things that you wanted to share, because I was very curious about that.
So as we start to look more at the school level and then at the student level, now that we have our student census, we're really going to start to look for, are we seeing themes of certain things? So for example, is it in reading at grade 3 or is it in reading at grade 6? Is it specific to one of the components of reading? Is it around comprehension? Is it around fluency? And what patterns are we seeing in certain schools? And are we seeing different patterns in other schools? I think before our plan was, a high level that we were using Lexia as a reading strategy improvement, which is an excellent tool and a resource. And now monitoring, how much is it being used? Is it being used for the right students? And is that really what their gap in their reading is? And is that program going to target that? So being really precise in what it is that we're looking for and what patterns are we finding in our students. So for example, if in credit accumulation, we're finding that students are missing 1 credit, they're not having 16 credits by the end of grade 6 or grade 10, what's the issue there? And then as you drill down, are we finding out that they're not achieving a pattern, maybe that they're not getting their careers in civics credit? That's then where the focus is, instead of, students aren't getting all 16 credits. It gives us real data about which ones, and I'm not picking on careers and civics, but is that the one that they're missing? Why? If they're not graduating, is it because they haven't done their community service hours? Instead of just saying, oh, 17% of our students didn't graduate with a high school diploma.
Yeah. Does anyone else have a first question? Nope. Then go ahead, Trustee Sipcart.
Thank you. I noticed on the high-level goals on page 37, and I noticed that they're all around improving student literacy, math learning, et cetera. There is only the one, which is decrease our negative impact on the environment. In the past, we've had a lot more on, I'll say, capital priorities or our stewardship, which is one of our strategic priorities. I agree that that one falls in there, but I was just curious, and also on the even engaging communities piece. I was just curious if there was a rationale for why those kind of goals have shrunk a little bit. And yeah, I see you shake your head, yes.
Yeah, so that's where the messy came in, because we tended to have a lot of goals, and realistically, you can't achieve them all. There would be nothing worse than coming to you and saying that we had identified 40 goals and we achieved 20 of them. We should be setting realistic goals. So we do know, so this is high level, then there's the operational plan. Then underneath of that, we have department plans or school plans. So Superintendent Armstrong has the climate action plan underneath of that. All of those fall under other things. Then there's our, through Superintendent Allwonder and Superintendent Armstrong, there's facility usage, right? There's all sorts of different things underneath, but those are really in the nitty gritty of the work that will come up to demonstrating ethical stewardship. And those are the ones that you'll see periodic reports about.
And then as a supplemental to that, I assumed that some of this, the goals were related to the bill, I'm blanking
98.
on what, yeah, Bill 98 that just came out, because I know that they had really specific targets. Is that part of the rationale as for the shift as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Because we're required to report on those. So our thinking was we have to report on it anyways, that will include those ones.
Which actually makes a lot of sense. Yes.
We hope
thank you.
so. We'll let you know.
Yes, yes. Any other questions on the report? Seeing none, thank you very much. I believe the next report is from our OPSPA director.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I was getting taken away in the minimalism of the last report, and how impressed I was by it. I'll have to say I left my notes at home, so I will just speak and then I'll send them to Ms. LeBeouf after. But thankfully I had the chance as the new OPSPA director to attend the Advocacy Day that was at Queen's Park last week now, where we had our board of directors meeting on the Sunday, and then we essentially all the trustees were kind of divided up and met with various, whoever would meet with us, all the MPPs that day. Based on OPSPA's priorities, which were around funding, Indigenous education, capital priorities. I think there was one more, but I'm blanking on it. And I had the chance to meet with MPP Dowie. I met with MPP Gretzky's staff. She was unfortunately sick, but we still had a productive meeting there. And many trustees met with many MPPs. And from my vantage point, it was a very successful day in the sense that many MPPs do not have an education background in government in particular. Some do, but there are some trustees who are part of the opposition, I should say former trustees who are now MPPs, Lisa Gretzky being one of them, but some don't have any background. And so I think just even our presence there and then in having productive conversations was good. And it just elevates the issue of education during budget consultations. With that said, specific issues that I brought forward from our board specifically were actually student transportation. We had the opportunity to talk about the applied apprenticeship, I never get this one right, pathway, which is essentially a new program that the government has announced, and I was able to touch base with Director Houston and also the OPSPA directors about our concerns, actually, about that particular program that the government has put forward, and essentially shared that our region is really excelling and has a really good program, and we have a lot of concerns if there were to be another program that would stream students out of essentially high school into workplaces prematurely. So a better pathway would be OYAP and things like that. And so I was able to share that. We had very productive conversations about it. I will leave it there. If any trustees have any further questions, I can answer them offline, but I just wanted to give that report that I do think OPSPA is, I attended the first advocacy day in 2019 when I was the director, and then I was reflecting 4 years, and there's been a shift, a massive shift in how trustees are seen at Queen's Park. People are very open and respectful, and I noticed that OPSPA has really made inroads with the Minister of Education in particular, and he was very receptive to that as well. So I know that we have a lot of struggles, and many boards do, but I think those pathways for communication are more open than they have been. So
Thank you. I think that's an accurate observation from what I see in here as well. So thank you for that. The next report is the long-term accommodation. Oh, sorry, did Trustee Burgess have something? I wasn't sure if I heard.
I have a question just on the oral report of the ops.
You have a question? Trustee Burgess, I can't hear you very well, sorry.
Okay. Don't know what else I can do. I have a question of the OPSPA report.
Okay, your question?
About anything that's upcoming, have we heard anything about PEZ or any other? The next time we meet will be a meeting in January, and it'll be just probably prior to the Public Education Symposium, and I'm wondering if there's been any updates or any news about that.
thanks for the reminder, Trustee Burgess. Yes, the Public Education Symposium, I believe, is the 24th, 25th, or maybe 25th, 26th, 27th. Yes, somewhere in there. Yes, you're correct. We will have one meeting, but if trustees are interested in attending, there will be a number of good workshops, things like that, as always. So I look forward to seeing other trustees there.
Thank you, and I'm sure they can go to the OPSPA website for the information. Thank you, and now the long-term accommodation report.
Okay, thank you. I will try to go through this as quick as possible. Gail did give me some extra Reese's Peanut Butter Cups to bribe me to do that, so I will try. What I'm going to be going over is just an overview of the book that you all received. So this is something that we do every year, and I think even before I start, I want to thank Christine Breshammer because she does a significant amount of work putting this together for me. She's not here tonight, but I do want to thank her for what she's done. The purpose of this, there's a lot of numbers, a lot of populations, etc., but it's to support student learning and achievement based on our strategic priorities. We always have to keep that in the back of our head. We have our 2021 census, which is the most up-to-date one, which we do base projections on, and we can see finally it's sort of started to creep up a little bit. We see a % increase in the very last column on the right there. The previous years, it's mostly been, I think it's mostly been dipping a little bit. The one thing you'll notice, though, throughout the census data is that we do have a growing number of individuals, but the majority of the growth is in 65 and over. Just throw pictures in of our new schools because we have a lot of new ones. And what we've done is a lot of the principals have seen most of these new schools too. Again, the population distribution, you can see that the percents in the far right column, age 65 and over, go to what I was just saying about. That's the group that is tending to grow the most recently. So the information here, these three are very important. We have our 5-year renewal costs, and you can see that they're $448 million. Still very, very significant. And I'm going to show you what we get per year and what we used to get per year, so you can see how that number continues to be as it is. Now, it will become a little bit better because we do have our 2 brand new schools being built. We have another addition being built, Legacy Oak, and again, I'll go over that in a couple more slides later on. The average board-wide FCI, they typically consider 30% to be the benchmark of, we don't want it to be over 30%, otherwise you have aging infrastructure, some big renewal needs. We're at 42%. Even though we've had a number of new builds, we're still one of the older boards across the province as far as the infrastructure. And you can see that the average aging infrastructure is 48 years. And again, Leamington High School, beautiful cafeteria area. And what's happened as we speak is the ministry, they completed an initial 5-year assessment cycle already, so that was done. Now they're on their second cycle. So they're going back to the buildings again to establish what the FCIs are, what the renewal needs are going to be for those buildings. And those are, it's a committee that's made up of 2 engineers, and they specialize in building design and construction and building systems. Now, this is a really significant slide as well. So, sorry it's small, but over the last number of years, since 15-16, we've received extra SEI money. So previous to this, we used to receive approximately $6 million in renewal money, and that's all we received for the year. Now we're receiving the $6 million renewal, but we're also receiving probably on average about a $22, $23, $24 million SCI fund that we can use in our buildings. And so you can see to date, since 2015, we have almost $245 million that we've received. And so that SCI money that we have, some of that goes into this right here. The same thing was at, this is Queen Vic. Yeah, Queen Vic. We did the same thing to Prince Edward. And we just had to dig out, and I think it was about a $3 million cost to do this, and that was to keep the structure sound as well as not have water leaking in the building. And here's our system. In a nutshell, we have our OTG capacity. That is the permanent places in the schools, not counting portables or porta-pack, and we only have 1 porta-pack left out at Gosfield. And then we have the number of students in elementary, and we look at our utilization rate by just taking the students divided by the OTG, and it gives us a 93.4% utilization rate in all of our buildings, which is quite good. And you can see about 8 years ago or so, we were down at 86%. And then we have 1,743 empty spaces at elementary. We used to have 3,600, a little bit more than 3,600. And then same thing for secondary. We have the OTG, again, permanent places in the schools, not portables, porta-packs. Take the students, divide it by that, and then you get your utilization rate. Again, it's over 90%, which is great. It used to be 79% in our high schools, which leads us to have 1,250 empty spaces. We used to have almost 3,000. I always show the picture, and I just change it up depending on the number of students that we have. So we have 3 LaSalle schools, basically, with empty spaces in elementary, and we have 1 Riverside High School with 1,251 empty spaces. Now, 10 years ago, this page was covered in schools. Now it's not. I keep this one in because it was about 8 years ago I put this in. This was the science lab at Herman. This is what kids had to use. Because of our monies, because of our consolidating buildings, building new, we now have science labs that look like this in the majority of our buildings. And money is going in right now to Kennedy to do just that up on the 3rd floor, is one of the components that'll be up there. And now we're into the FCI and utilization, so we can look at this, and where we want our schools to be is in the bottom right corner quadrant with the good condition, high enrollment. We don't want them to be in the top left with the poor condition, low enrollment. Now this is Shelley's favorite slide. I know Gail likes this one too, or sorry, Trustee Hatfield. And I'm going to do it because I have to. So usually there's a drum roll. So this was in 2013. And you can see our schools are spread out, and a lot are in that top quadrant up there. So this is today. I'll go back. All up. And then back. So we've made significant gains here, and you can really see that now we're all almost on the bottom and on the right side there. And what I'd like to mention too is the top school up there in the top right corner. That's the Amigo, so that will not be there come September. We also have Kingsville Public up in the middle top. That will not be there. And we have Kingsville High School that will not be there. And then Jack Biner's sort of at the top of the bunch down there, and that won't be there either. So there'll only be one left up there. Here's our new Eastview. Student, staff love it. There's walls. The profiles in here, you have your secondary feeder boundaries that are outlined in colors. Then you have the total enrollment of all the elementary schools over time. Each beginning of the family of schools has all the different schools with their enrollment summary, their OTG, and the number of students they have projected out approximately 10 years. They also have the utilization rates. In the beginning of the family of schools, there's the narrative that's written. What it has in there is potential development. It has history of individual schools. It has the FCI, a whole bunch of information that's on the right of the picture. It talks about any uniqueness that they may have, touches on boundary or program adjustments that may be coming, potential, and just possibilities to show ethical stewardship. And again, every school has this information. The picture with the school profile information talks about being accessible, what the renewal costs are, the FCI, childcare, etc. Every school has this as well. Again, it's the utilization rates. Same thing for the high schools. I just put North Star in here. If you can remember, Paige was one of the student trustees last year. And again, they have their school profile information, but they also have the programs. So it might be WCCA for Walkerville. This has MAPS, it's grade 9 to 12. Some have French immersion. And again, they have their utilization rates for each individual secondary school. There's a French immersion analysis in here as well with all the schools. We can note that there's 15.9% of the elementary students are in French immersion and 6.3% are in secondary French immersion. A little bit lower since COVID. That did have a big effect, but the numbers are starting to come back up again because we've noticed that our kindergarten classes are having some fairly big numbers. Beautiful James L. Dunn. Just really quick about this. That's the card maker. I think when we did the tour, I probably showed it because I'm always excited about it. When we purchased the building, we did not know that was there. It was in the basement of the building. And so Doug with 3 Aces, his crew, actually had to take it apart, bring it up the stairs, and then reassemble it to put it in the library there because we wanted it as a showcase. And I actually found one of the bicycle cards that was still in there from a long time ago. The feeder area for FI, so it has, for example, Queen Victoria there says 73. So that just means that 73 kids that live in Queen Victoria's catchment area have decided to do French immersion programming over at James L. Dunn. And it's the same for all the numbers there. And then it has the French immersion boundary. And again, it talks about the percent of FI. James L. Dunn is 100%, but we have a number of dual track schools out there. So it breaks down the percent of French immersion in those schools as well. Beautiful picture of Leamington at night. This is what's happened over the last number of years and real recently. So we have Legacy Oak built, 21. We have James L. Dunn. We have North Star that we're 22. We have Eastview, which was just this year. We have an addition going in Legacy Oak right now. The Kingsville K-12 build is going on. The new North Shore and Tecumseh School is being built. We have the Lakeshore area that we're going to put a new build in. We received funding for Northwood Addition and Queen Elizabeth, I think we're pretty close on too. So that's a lot of work that's going on. And that doesn't even count the work like at Kennedy in the science lab or Hugh Beaton relocating the office or Glenwood relocating the office and changing the school around that way. We talk about partnerships in here. We meet once a year with the groups. They come in here. We share our information with them. This year we did it a little different and we included Watson Associates, which was a positive addition to the group. This is just the daycares that have been approved. Again, a lot of them. They're beautiful too. Most of our new builds do have the daycares, the 4 rooms. I mentioned throughout in some of the narrative, some of the boundary program adjustment considerations. This is something that Superintendent Armstrong was talking about as far as we have to look at all of our programs to see where we might be able to make some efficiencies. Talks about the portables in there. There's a sheet in there for that. And then the very back, you can see all the historical perspective of the accommodation actions over the last number of years, even before I was in this role. And here's our 2 new buildings being built. That's the new Tecumseh and then the new Kingsville School. And if you haven't been there, the Kingsville School, I don't know, Trustee Burgess probably has bid by it. Trustee Armstrong possibly out that way, but the new Kingsville School, it's just huge. It looks really impressive. So any questions?
Trustee Buckler.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm well aware I'm getting 2 new schools in my area. But I'm also very well aware that even when you build a new school on 22, that's not going to take the accommodation pressures from Lakeshore, which has the most portables of any of our schools and has since the day it was built. So I'm just wondering if the addition to Lakeshore is somewhere in our radar. Is it somewhere in a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, just to alleviate the portables and to give us a break? Because we have a lot of building going on, and that new school's not going to cover all of the overflow.
So through you, Madam Chair, so I've already done a little bit of analytics so far in the area, and where we've situated that property will actually alleviate both Lakeshore and Bell River's portable situation. So it's a 500 student school.
Okay. I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
Trustee McKinley?
Yes, thank you for this very comprehensive report. I did notice on page 9 as I was reading about it said it's regarding the permits, the number of building permits issued in 2020 and 2021. It said 2020 experienced a total of 2,329 building permits issued, whereas 2021 experienced a total of building permits. It doesn't actually give the number of building permits, so maybe if you know that, or maybe we can.
Yeah, I can go back and look. Maybe I just forgot to put it in.
Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. On this side, Trustee Cook?
I just wanted to say thank you for the report, but the written report, but more than that, thank you for your verbal report, because I can hear your passion and your excitement, and there's a lot of good things happening, so thank you.
Well, I will say, through Madam Chair, that getting into education, I never thought I was going to be closing schools or building schools. So it's very different.
For sure. Any other questions, Trustee Sipcar?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I haven't had time to really go through it. It's 150 pages. But I did have a question on the French immersion side of things in light of both our revised estimates, but also the strategic plan in reviewing the French immersion program. I made note that Sandwich and Herman are both the 2 high schools that basically different schools in like the western kind of side of Windsor and LaSalle pull from. And from what I can see, Sandwich Secondary is getting over capacity, or it looks the way that it's being projected to grow in the future, continuing to operate above its capacity at 105%. And then when I thought about Marlborough and also James L. and I was thinking about that, is part of the review of French immersion to look at the geographic location of the students and if there's a need to add another high school program or what's, because obviously that's significant busing costs. I was a student that lived in Amherstburg and was bused to Sandwich Secondary School, and I know that we were like there was a lot of issues with it, and so I'm just wondering if part of it is looking at how can we do this most efficiently in terms of both program delivery but also the busing and associated costs there. For specifically French immersion.
Okay, through you, Madam Chair. We are looking at efficiencies. So I've started some of the areas, and the bottom line is right now, with the exception of our full French schools like Bellwood, like James L. Dunn, what's our other one? Oh, Herman, sorry, yeah, Herman. With the exception of those, when you have a program at Marlborough that has 88 French students, or whatever it is, 102, 88, something in there somewhere, that is a very inefficient program. And if you look at the other side, even for an English program, I look at Tecumseh Vista, and they have less than 200 English kids in their program. And that's, again, inefficient as far as staffing goes. And his program goes too, because every class, not that there's anything wrong with it, but every class is combined pretty much in schools that are that size. And when Superintendent Bryant has to do staffing, we have to overstaff those buildings to compensate for the little numbers. So there might be a grade 8 class that has 7 students in it, and that's just not fiscally responsible. So initially we put French immersion in areas that we thought didn't have it and had a long distance to go to get to it. But now, since COVID, our numbers have dropped, which has hurt all of the dual tracks especially. Does that answer the question?
And the director wants to add to that?
And I'll touch on the secondary school side, having been doing staffing for a number of years. Sandwich is an incredible program that can sustain itself in terms of the French immersion. A challenge in secondary is always the teacher qualifications, right? So a student, and you would have experienced it, right? If you want a French immersion pathway and the phys ed teacher is French qualified, then that's going to be your courses that you're Tecumseh Vista would probably be our next closest viable program. And I'll be realistic, Herman is not a viable program. There's such a low number of students that you're continuing to add costs. So a section that could have 32 students in it, as an example, has 9. Because you're trying to run a program for them to be able to take FI courses when a majority of the school is taking it in English. So there's a cost every time. So the sweet spot is Sandwich, has a wonderful French immersion, Vista close. And beyond that, it would be, I think, really difficult because then you're just spreading it out even more, which is more cost to us. The transportation, I appreciate that cost. The cost of the sections at about $42,000 a section is a lot of money.
So as a supplemental to that, then, is there any future plans to divert students towards Herman? Or is that something that's kind of to be determined in light of the viability, thinking about, French immersion, or no?
Through you, Madam Chair, we tried that. Then they choose English in their home high school.
And through you, Madam Chair, it is an interesting dynamic because you have your full French elementary school right there. And then a lot of them end up going into the English side of it. And it's not for lack of not trying to continue the French with the teachers.
Yeah, I find that really interesting because I can understand someone like, myself and my daughter we're far from Herman. So it might just logically be more difficult or more challenging, even though there's busing or we could, arrange a ride. But that's a really curious problem that full French students wouldn't choose that in the high school. And so I guess kind of my original question was around understanding the French immersion program. And I guess I wonder if these are some of the kind of discussions that senior admin will be having.
Director?
It goes to the teacher's qualifications, right, and what courses can be offered. So, for example, we had a lovely conversation at dinner about taking chemistry in high school with one of our student trustees and the importance of the pathway in science. So if that's not offered in FI, that pathway is done for that student. If I wanted to take American history and it's not available because we can only offer so many courses. So then students are caught up in that, do I want to pursue the sciences to go into a medical field or do I want to pursue the French piece of it? You were fortunate that Sandwich had a big enough that your pathway was there for you. That's not available in our other schools.
Any other questions from the trustees?
I have a question, Burgess.
Sure, Trustee Burgess, your question?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Superintendent Alwyn. So the average age of our schools is diminishing. When we ask for capital funding for new projects, since we're constantly being improved, is that actually a double-edged sword, and will it hurt us in future applications?
Did you? Sorry, Trustee Burgess, I didn't quite get all of it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know the thing with the phone here. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, the average age of our school inventory is getting younger. So on the face of it, we don't have the oldest inventory, and therefore when we put our capital business cases forward, since things are getting better, we won't look maybe as needy, I'll say, in the capital department. Will that hurt us in future capital applications?
Through you, Madam Chair. Trustee Burgess, it won't hurt us. Really, right now, what the ministry is looking at is accommodation pressures. That's where they seem to be putting the funding, and that doesn't have anything to do with our new builds.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to clarify too, and it was something I thought about last year. Yes, we're getting a new K-12. Yes, we're getting a new school in Tecumseh, but you have to remember that that's 2 new schools, and it's going to knock off a number of years because all 3 of those buildings in Kingsville, plus the D'Amigo School, they are very old buildings. However, we still have another 65 schools in our system that all became 1 year older. Right, so there's a bit of a balance there. It's not, you think that it's going to get a lot less, but it actually doesn't, because each year there's still that 1 year that's being added up for all those schools.
If I could supplement the comment I would make, when your chart with quadrants, what happens is they still keep moving in the better area.
Yes, they are.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the report. Okay. The next item is M4. You have in your package the update on justice, inclusion, equity, and diversity actions. Are we just taking questions? Trustee Cook? Trustee Cook? Oh. Someone presenting? No. Okay, so we're just taking questions if you have any. If not now, you can always send them in another time. So no questions. Thank you for the report. M5 is the report from the audit committee. You have that in your package. The annual report that gets submitted every year to the ministry. Any questions on that? No. And M6 is the report of the striking committee. You have that in your package. And I'll just say that when we did meet, it was good that all trustees, we were able to appoint everyone to their first choice. So that worked out really well, depending on, the different areas of interest. So it worked out well that everyone was able to get their first choice. Any questions on that? No, thank you. The chair's report. My chair's report is going to be really brief. And I just wanted to say to everybody that we have big plans for a great future for all our students, but in particular, coming up now and into January are our grade 8 information nights, so that the parents and students can visit the high schools and start registering for the high school of their choice. And that's a good thing. That's all I really have to report for tonight. There was a call with the minister, but there really wasn't anything to report that wasn't already sent to us through email or OPSPA or the media. And and the minister did thank us for our services and wish us a nice holiday season. And I would like to do the same to everyone here tonight and everyone who might be watching. I would like to extend my warm wishes for a happy and safe holiday season. And of course, the next time that the trustees will be meeting will be 2024. Hard to believe. But a new year will soon be here. That's my report. Trustee question period. Do we have any questions for this meeting? No. Do we have any notices of motion for this meeting? No. Do we have any announcements? Trustee McKinley?
Excuse me, thank you. I'd just like to announce that the 6 South Windsor schools, for their cereal box challenge, brought in another record-breaking amount of cereal with 3,283,000 some grams of cereal. That approximately 500 leaf bags worth of cereal went out to over 30 schools and some community organizations as well. And our own board office building here and the facilities plant, I'm also proud to announce, almost doubled their total from last year with a whopping, I think it was 406,000, something like that, grams of cereal. There was a whole lot of Quick Oats. I've never seen so many boxes of Quick Oats. So it was a great effort by the board office and facilities. So I just wanted to thank them for rising to the occasion.
The director would like to add to that?
So first, I'd like to thank Trustee McKinley for that, and the food is well used within our family, so appreciate the effort that goes into that. I will say, though, that we'll be doing an audit at the board office on the department that won. So we're going to be bringing in the external auditors to ensure that they were in compliance, because it's interesting that the administrative assistant from that department is the one who collects all the data, and then that department won. This is one of my first years of not winning, but I'm not bitter.
And I would like to say, like, congratulations, too, on those incredible numbers. And, you know, it's wonderful that the giving level was up, but I think it's also a recognition in our community of the need. And that's the sad part, you know, that the need is also greater for our families and the food banks, and every community is struggling. Trustee McKinley?
Yeah, I don't want to forget also our community partners, because believe me, I could not deliver 500 leaf bags worth of cereal. I'm good for maybe a van's worth. But Sharp Bus Lines and 3 Aces Moving, they do a lot of the long haul, moving all of that cereal to our schools and our community partners. And also this year, the Real Canadian Superstore on Dougal donated gift cards toward purchasing the leaf bags. And also very grateful for that, because without the whole group, we couldn't do this. And I'm so thankful for all of the students, their parents, guardians, our staff, because they're the ones that are bringing it all in. So kudos, give yourselves a pat on the back. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements for this meeting? Seeing none, then we have concluded our approved agenda. I will declare the meeting adjourned and wish everybody happy holidays. See you in the new year.
Now exiting.
Thank you.